Dr. Gina Sobrero, thank you so much for being on the show today. How are you?
I'm great. I hope you're doing well.
I'm
Thank you so
doing
much for
phenomenal.
having me.
Of course. I thank you for being on here. Honestly, I feel for the concept of what this show is about, specifically with coaching and consulting, I don't think this is probably going to be a better episode, specifically from your background and specifically what ANHCO does. So I'm very excited. Yeah, I'm very excited to jump into this. We want to talk about some of the misconceptions, some of the myths when it comes to the coaching space, people diving into it, maybe what's going on in the coaching world, especially when it comes to health and life coaching. But before we do that, I would love for our audience to learn a little bit more about yourself, how you got into this space, and then specifically would love to dive into what ANCO is all.
Well, as far as me, I've been doing personal training, health coaching, life coaching for about 25 years. Got my PhD in exercise science in 2007. So I've also been an exercise physiology professor. So I've spent, over 20 years training people, training clients, mentoring other professionals, managing health coaches, and educating students. And over time, I realized that, the health coaching space is such a unique space because it's something that guides true transformation. So it goes just beyond giving people a plan. So, I learned that me just teaching people wasn't really fulfilling me. It's about guiding them through sustainable behavior change. And so that's where the coaching came in. So I started really focusing on coaching, have done that since 2019. And so basically, as far as how I ended up with ANHCO, after my previous job ended, I was lucky enough to see the ANHCO, which stands for Advanced National Health and Life Coach Organization, was gearing up for their first cohort and needed NBHWC certified coaches. So I am one of those,
Nice.
and that's National Board of Health and Wellness Coaches. And the rest is history. And so, as the head coach at ANCO, I focus on helping new coaches refine their skills, streamline their processes, and create real impact. My perspective on coaching has evolved from just delivering knowledge to truly empowering clients and my fellow coaches. And a huge part of that evolution has been learning how to, as we're talking about, manage time effectively so we can do our best work without the burnout.
First of all, I just want to say thank you because I'm a coach in a way, but your extensive knowledge, you're what I would call like the coach's coach.
Well,
I,
thank you. We'll
I don't
go with
know.
that.
I don't know if anybody's ever called you that before, but it sounds like it's like you're the coach's coach. And I always tell people it doesn't matter who you are, everyone needs a coach. So the fact that you're
Yes,
helping these
and I
people,
say that a lot with I coach many professionals, I coach medical doctors, I coach other health coaches, I coach professors, and I always let them know, even coaches need coaches, even teachers need teachers.
correct.
We all need that sort of support and assistance as we're growing to the next level.
I think it's interesting. You said something where, it's the teaching aspect, but then there's the coaching. And I tell people there's a difference between the two, right?
Yes.
They do work hand in hand. It's like the concept of like a square being a rectangle, but a rectangle's not a square. Like
Yeah.
you do both, but I feel like they're different tools for different reasons and different seasons for what people need, right? For what your experience, you say you've seen it change. Do you feel like you're more teaching or more coaching people when you're in like your process?
It really is a combination of both. When I work with somebody as a health coach or as a teacher to health coaches, I let them know that this is a partnership. So it's
Yeah.
much different than if I was personal training somebody or if I'm teaching somebody, I just tell them what to do. In the health coach space, we're brainstorming on a problem that we're going to work on together. And really, it's all about the person who I'm coaching. It's about them taking control
Hmm.
and deciding what they want to work on. And then I'm very good at helping them whittle those down into smart goals. One of the things that I often tell my people is you can think of it as you're the driver and I'm the GPS. So you
I
decide
like that.
you decide where you're going, you decide how fast you're going, but I
Correct.
can help guide you there. I can help provide accountability. I can help provide education if you want it. And then
Hmm.
also, I can just be a huge cheerleader for you. And that one thing that I think is really missing in a lot of the education spaces, especially when we're working with behavior change.
You're reminding me of like when I talk to my friends because When they come to me, they're like, hey, I'm coming to you to speak to Jermaine or Jay. I don't need the coach or professor. And at first, I didn't know what they were talking about. They were just like, I just need you to hear me. I don't want to be guided through it. And then
Yes.
once they vent or whatnot, then they're like, okay, now you can coach me. I was like, I wasn't intentionally going to do that. They were like, you don't have to. It's in your DNA. It's just like how you are.
Yeah,
All
it
right.
sounds like a natural coach.
I work on it every day. But I think it's interesting, like for what you're saying, because whenever my friends or people that I know they want to make a decision, I tell them I'm like, hey, I'm here for you if you want to go left, here for you if you're going to go right. We're just going to figure out the best way to do either one.
Exactly.
Sometimes they like that, sometimes they don't, because they're like, why can't you just be like on one side or the
Yeah. Or why
other?
can't you just tell me what to do?
Exactly, right? I'm like, well, that's it's not quite how it works, but it's also, again, I think it's that transformational guidance and like collaborative experience when like you're coaching someone that is very crucial and needed. It's like the concept
Yes.
of like, hey, I can teach you how to fish, or I can give you a fish, or I can teach you how to fish.
Hmm.
And I think for a lot of coaches, that's what we hopefully aim to do. And that sounds like what you're doing as well too. It's like, hey, I don't want to just tell
Absolutely.
you, give you the roadmap. I want to help guide you through this and even then create maybe your own pathways. I'll just ensure that you make it through the pathway um, as guided, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. I tell them, I mean, we're partners in this,
Hmm.
but I'm not making decisions for them.
Yeah,
They're making their decisions. I assist them with how to get to their next goal.
got you. So, question then, because a lot of it is focused on health and life. And the reason I say this is because I come from more of the health background, not much more of the life background, but oftentimes people who are like health coaches, specifically in fitness, you have no choice but to then dive over into like the mindset part. They go hand in hand.
Absolutely.
My question is, how have you been able to combat that? I mean, I know you guys do both, but have you seen a struggle when you first got started to then be this life coach because now you have to take care more than just the physical. You now have to take care of the mental, this whole person as a well-being. And I know for some coaches, they're like, I can't be a life coach because I don't have life experience or so for how do you go about teaching someone then to become that? Or like, is there a certain criteria for a person to become that type of life coach? Is it years of experience? Is it their actual skill sets? I know I threw like three questions at you at once,
Yeah.
so I'm sorry.
So that's okay. So I don't think that there's, I'm sure that there are credentialing agencies that say,
Hmm.
yes, these are the things that you need to have. But as far as innate ability, it's just the ability to really sit down and hear somebody when they're talking. And that's probably the biggest thing is that so many people these days don't feel heard. They're spending all their time on the internet and they're getting all of this information coming so fast. They feel like they don't have a say in anything. So a lot of times people just need to be heard. So I let them be heard, as you were talking about your friends need to be heard, but it's just the ability to have sympathy, have empathy, and then just some soft skills like being able to do motivational interviewing and being
Mm,
able to give affirmations and things like that. It's, you don't necessarily have to have life experience because
correct.
a lot of times the same steps for behavior change are the same steps anywhere.
Hmm.
So, the basic steps of behavior change from the trans theoretical model are the same. Everybody starts with pre-contemplation, contemplation, action. So everybody's going to go through those. So as a coach, your job to help the person realize kind of what stage they're in and where they're ready to go right now. I
Gotcha.
know that
So,
doesn't exactly answer it, and that's
no,
that's
it
one of the
does.
things that I say a lot with my coaches and my students is that everything is so individual, but anybody can be, unfortunately, if you go on Instagram, anybody can be a life coach. Anybody can be a health coach. So I do encourage people to go with people who are actually certified.
Correct.
However, the skills can be learned by anybody who is, an empathetic person.
Yeah, and I'm happy that you said that because one of the biggest things I wanted to talk to you about was those misconceptions, right? Or the conversation where it's like everybody's a health coach or just a life coach. I would say that. I think that that's more people, or it's kind of both. You have this conversation where it's like this person actually has life experience, they've gone through it, and then you have the person who's the textbook person, but they've never done it.
Hmm.
So it's this back and forth where it's like, who do you trust? Which one did you go with? Obviously, you want ideally the one who's have a combination of both,
Right.
but it's nice because anyone can become a coach, but it's also, I would say, a little not harmful. I would say it's a little concerning that a lot of people can just claim to then be one, right?
Absolutely. And that's why, before NBHWC came out, Well Coaches was kind of a certifying body. They were working with the American College of Sports Medicine in order to make this a recognized field. So now NBHWC is really the big certifying body, as well as International Coaches Foundation. So you know that if you get a coach with a certification from there, you know that they have had hours of training. And not only do you have to have hours of training, but you have to have hours of, people watching you health coach people. You have to have, like 500 hours of
Yeah,
health coaching. Luckily I only have to supervise about 40 of those at a
just
time,
40.
but you have to have several hundred hours of health coaching to actually do this.
Correct.
So, in addition to be certified by these certifying bodies, you not only have to do that, but you have to go through a program that is accredited by these certifying bodies. And when you go through an accredited program, you know that they're covering everything that is needed to be a health coach. So, even if somebody comes in young and green, just graduated from college, they're still going to have a lot of experience by the time they get out. So it's not just like, Joe Smith who graduated from high school and goes to the gym and says he's a personal trainer, because, that's a whole different conversation on my personal training side. But
I come
it
from
really
personal
is
training
all
as
about,
well.
yeah, it's all about, it's all about certification and really being certified, because that protects the person who is purchasing the services, basically in knowing that you have somebody who has got a high level of education and has got a high level of training.
Yeah, and I definitely want to come back to the personal training side because I mean that was how I got into the coaching space. And then it's transitioned over to more mindset, high performance, and then to sales side. But you mentioned something which I think is a lot of people, I would say they underestimate is it's not the fact of them just getting a certification to advance their skill sets. It's showing their commitment to provide better service for the people they're looking to serve because they're paying to learn more to give you all this knowledge that you're basically just going to learn like this or apply like this from
Right.
having a coach. Do you think for where we are nowadays, I would say higher education to a degree is definitely important, but it is this conversation of college education versus certification and which one really matters, which one doesn't. Do you think people should still have like the certifications along with the higher education as far as like universities, or is it nowadays where if you have enough certifications and experience, that's okay to then start pursuing this career?
Good question. I certainly think that there are plenty of trainers who have not done any undergraduate
Yeah.
courses in exercise physiology and in training who can be wonderful trainers. But, I tend to go with, I always go with American College of Sports Medicine because that's the gold
Mhm.
standard. And it does require that you have, a certain amount of
Mhm.
education before you can even sit for like an certified exercise physiologist
Correct.
exam. Now, I believe the personal trainer, they've dropped that down to age 18. So you can be 18 and
Wow.
apply to be a personal trainer, but you still have to go through the program and you
Of
still have to
course.
show that you know what you're doing. But with certified exercise physiologist or any of the higher clinical degrees, they do require additional higher education before you get it. So, and you're talking to a professor as well. So
Yeah,
obviously, you
that's
know,
why I was curious because I was just like, okay, I wonder how she's gonna feel about
yeah,
this.
yeah. So I mean, I can tell you that if somebody goes through an exercise physiology program or kinesiology program, which there are so many fantastic ones out there, they're going to get the highest level of education. And then, ideally, I mean, and there are specific courses that we taught in exercise physiology or that we teach in exercise physiology that specifically prepare our students for the ACSM exam, letting them know that these are the things they're looking for. We're preparing them for all of that.
That's gotcha. So it sounds like one, if you can do the latter, do the latter. But
If
regardless,
you can, absolutely.
right? which I think was for me like I like to consider myself a student of life. I love knowledge, like to the point that I'm kind of becoming known as what's a knowledge broker. Like I just love information and then being able to help like give the information to people as needed. That's kind of how this whole podcast started, is
Yeah.
where it's like just to help share insights for people that they typically wouldn't gain, right? Now, with that being said, can we I want to backtrack a little bit and see if we can help define what that health and life coaching really means, right? Because I think it's a broad term. And I know there's like subsections, and especially for what you do, like at ANHCO, over, what was it? I think I saw like 400
It's
different.
almost 500 modules.
Oh,
Yeah.
it's like a kid in a candy store. I was like, this is great.
Yeah, you're going to hear my voice on all of them, I think.
Perfect. But yes, help us to define specifically what does that mean to be like a health coach or a life coach. And I know there's like different variations of it. There's routes that you can take, but as a broad spectrum for people who like, hey, they keep saying these terms, but what does that even mean? How
So
do you
for health
define that?
coach, I normally focus on, well, it's hard because your mental and physical health is so intertwined. So there are mental things that we need to focus on as well, although it's always important to let people know we're not psychologists, we're not psychiatrists, we're not social workers.
Yeah.
So we are not here to help them solve serious mental problems. But as a health coach, the majority of time we work on things like nutrition, physical activity, hydration, stress, social support, sleep. So all of those things that go into trying to make you, I guess, perform your best.
Correct.
Now, life coach works on different goals. So it can work on, what are you going to do for a job after college? What is your
Mhm.
next move? How do you get to the C-suite? So it's much more of everything outside of that.
Correct. That's interesting. I never thought about it that way but now that you're mentioning it, I know that it can branch off to different things because when I'm thinking of like life coach, I'm also thinking about like career coaching, which I guess the health and
Yep.
life is just the umbrellas, and then it's the different subsections or the different sub niches after that
Yes.
that embody. Okay, that makes a lot more sense. Now you've been doing this for a very long time, which not too many people can say they have been. I feel like nowadays people switch so much between the things they want to do, and just because like the fast pace of maybe technology or just how the society is changing, how have you seen just the industry of coaching transform from what it was when you first got started to like now?
Well, it's grown a lot, which is
Hmm.
fantastic. One of the main things that health coaches and health coaching certifying bodies wanted to do when we first started was to make sure that we could bill for insurance, which many times we can now.
Hmm.
Insurance companies will often offer health coaching as part of their benefits. So I
Smart.
worked at a company previously where we called out to people offering them health coaching because that was part of their benefits. I work with a couple of companies right now that work with people's FSAs or HSAs.
Mhm.
So while people can't use their insurance for it necessarily, they can pay for it through their FSAs or HSAs. And so those are huge changes because we didn't have that before. I can also say that I think doctors are really realizing that this is a missing piece of
Really?
especially preventative care. And I
Okay.
think that as we go towards hopefully a more holistic preventative care type of model, health coaching is going to be an integral part of that. I have seen many doctors' offices lately wanting to hire health coaches and wanting to hire people who do this sort of thing because the doctors don't have time for it and the doctors aren't trained for it. And, many of the doctors don't have forgive me, doctor friends, but don't have the bedside manner for it. And unfortunately, a lot of times they're limited by insurance because they have to see people back to back to back to back to back. They
Correct.
can't sit there and, make smart goals with people.
Yeah.
They can't they can't talk about how your sleep is and, are you keeping your bedroom dark and cold and quiet?
Correct.
Those are things that's I think the missing link, and not only with preventative healthcare but obviously with many people with chronic diseases. I work with lots of people. I think the majority of them, the chronic diseases I I deal with right now are diabetes and high blood pressure
Yeah.
and obesity, of course. So health coaching can assist with that as well.
I think
So those are some of the changes that I've seen.
no, it's maybe it's because I'm in the field and I come from the health background first as a coach. It sounds like, oh, that makes sense. Like, why haven't we been doing this in the first place? Like, you would think it would be common sense, but I can see if you're not in the field, you just probably don't pay attention to it. But the way you're articulating it makes me think, because I'm big into sales, like that's my big background as well. And it's the concept of a closer and a setter, or an SDR and a BDR. So it's like you want somebody in front of there to do all the not leg work, but different type of work, so that when the actual doctor comes in, they can execute as efficiently as possible, but we can also really isolate the time and attention to basically do a better job. So it's like, hey, if we don't even need to get you to this stage in the first place, let's not
Right.
get you there.
Yeah, I mean, you have somebody who can actually spend more time with the patient. The doctor, the health coach can update the physician. This is where we are here. The physician can go in and go, okay, 1, 2, 3, here we go. Here's your script, but hopefully you're doing great and I send you on your way. You're doing so great with health coaching. You don't need the medications.
So it's interesting because I was on a previous podcast and we were talking about how nowadays, or the shift that's happened is, if someone tells you like, oh, I have a health coach or a life coach, it's like, oh, that's great. Like, what other kind of coaches do you have? Versus 10 years ago, or maybe a few years ago before that, you said you had a coach and it was just like, what's wrong with you? Like, why do you? And that's so interesting to me, because now it's almost like a badge of honor that you're taking care of yourself in this preventative manner by having the necessary people in place, which is that health and life coach. A person will look at you differently now and be like, okay, they have their stuff together because they have like this extra board of advisors in their life to make sure that they're the best version of themselves. And
yes, or at least they're trying to get themselves together.
yes, correct. That's the goal. That's the hope. So with that being said then, right, I mean, because we live in an interesting time, technology is high as ever, opportunities are everywhere. How have you seen like the mental and health state of, I would say specifically America, because that's where I live and not where we live, of the US has evolved to where now, is it like a higher demand that's needed because things are shifting with higher technology, obesity? It's not a want, it's actually a need.
The new technology and all of the things that we're exposed to every day, people are more mentally stressed than ever. In addition, so many of us, like me, in 2020, were sent home for 2 or 3 weeks and have been working here ever since. So you have people who were previously at workplaces where they were able to be more active just because they were walking to different offices for meetings or walking down the hall to talk to a colleague or something like that, to literally, you had so many of us sitting at home with 4 screens here sitting for 8 hours at a time. And that's a huge issue. And that's one of the things that I talk a lot about, is the whole sitting is the new smoking movement,
Oh,
where
wow. I never thought about it like that. That's
yes. So, and I have a whole lecture on it. But basically, even if you go to the gym for an hour or two a day, if you sit for the rest of the day, it negates all the stuff that you've done at the gym, because you're back in a seated position. You're not having the blood circulation you need. You're not having the glucose uptake you need because the muscles are contracting. It's a real issue. So I work a lot with people with workplace ergonomics and making sure that they're moving during the day. See that especially since 2020, jobs have gotten much more sedentary. The stress has gotten much higher, and especially among people who work at home, there's not that social support that they have from the workplace. And so that's an added stress plus a lost support, because one of the things that we often ask during behavior change is, what kind of support system do you have? Do you have a spouse? Do you have a brother, sister, a coworker who can support you and be with you and hold you accountable? So they're losing that because it's Zoom all day, every day. So so I see a lot of that. And then again, with the social networks and things like that, people have definitely gotten addicted to scrolling their phones. So we're seeing much more problems with sleep because people will get into the bed and scroll the phone, get the blue light in their eyes, can't go to sleep. So, having a lot of issues like that as well. So it's something that has evolved with the time that, yeah, we actually do need it now.
Gotcha, yeah. And that's like even speaking candidly for myself, I find myself at times falling into those, I won't call them bad behaviors, but things that are negatively affecting like the mental and physical side. I ran 7 miles today. And then like again, I'm sitting all day. So I force myself every hour or at least every 2 hours. I'm like, I'm going to go take a 10-minute walk. I don't
Good for you.
I don't care what's going on. Or even if I'm sitting down, I'm like, okay, because I pinched my sciatic nerve years back, doing simple movements to rotate the spine, different little things to where it's like, okay, maybe I can't go walk 10,000 steps or I stand up all the time, but I can do something, right? And I feel like everybody can. What are like, if you don't mind sharing, what are like two things in that perspective that you feel like someone can implement right now just to make sure that they're taking better care of like their health and I would say probably life, not to
Yeah,
dive in it.
absolutely. So, of course, one of the things that I work with people a lot on is, ideally, if you can have a standing sitting desk, that's not really something that's available to all people. But what I do recommend is setting alarm each hour on the hour, and you get up and you walk somewhere, or you get up and you do like 10 squats. Yeah, and there was actually a study, and I cannot remember who did the study, but Dr. Rhonda from Found My Fitness podcast has been talking about it lately, where there's a recent study out showing that basically if you do these squats kind of on the hour, every hour throughout the day, that lowers your glucose level more
Really?
than walking. So, get up and do 10 squats if you can't walk.
I am going to start incorporating that
Yeah, or
today.
or at the very least, just stretching, because just by sitting all day long, we're shortening our hip flexors, which can lead to low back problems. And just standing up and stretching and doing some good hamstring stretches and, reaching up above your head are things that will start to get those, the blood flowing again and the blood to your brain. I mean, people talk about brain fog all the time. Well, if you're sitting all the time, you're not getting as much blood flow up to your brain. A lot of people don't realize that one of the reasons why they come up with great ideas while they're exercising, because there's an increase of blood flow to the brain.
Yeah, makes sense. I didn't, it's like these subconscious things. Somebody told me it's like your body knows the best way to take care of itself. And if you
Yes.
ever took the time to really look at different parts of your life and if like, okay, if you stub your toe, why do you do certain things? Like, why do you try to grab it as hard as you can? Your body is trying to take care of itself. No difference of, the reason why you're sweating. People are like, I'm sweating because I'm hot. It's like, no, 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 you're sweating because your body's trying to cool itself down. Like there's
Right.
these little things, if people took the time to understand how the body works, why it does what it does, and how it's trying to actually make you better, you probably will live a slightly better life. But people don't take the
Absolutely.
time to do so, right? And then that's where it comes to like these kind of conversations, resources, getting certified is so crucial. A part of me feels like even to the lowest level, I feel like everybody should have some form of knowledge and certification in this health and life coaching, but more so for themselves, not even the system do it for others. It's like I'm not saying that the school system like early on doesn't do a good job, but I feel like if they incorporated something more towards this, like actually taking care of yourself for the long term, how different would we actually be?
Well, it would be huge. I mean, so many elementary schools and high schools don't even have regular gym. And there was a big issue that came out during No Child Left Behind, where they were cutting activity hours so that teachers could spend time on preparing children for standardized tests. Well, it kind of backfired. And I actually had an office mate of mine when I was getting my PhD who kind of looked at that and looked at how kids did on standardized tests based upon their activity level at school each day. And of course, the kids that had more activity each day performed better. So I mean, our brain would be so much better. And then
Yeah.
all of these, it was a funny thing when I moved here. My son was 5, he was in kindergarten, and I kept on getting these notes from the teacher saying, well, he's just, I think he may be ADHD. I think he needs to go on medication. And I'm like, Yeah, he's 5. And first of all, when did we start having full day of school when they're 5? But you're expecting him to sit all day long, and he's a kid. He needs to move. He's being a boy. And I can't remember the guy's name. There's a great teacher on Instagram who works with ADHD kids, and he works in um, activity breaks several times during each one of his classes, and the kids love it. They have a great time. They do dances and all kinds of stuff, and then they perform much better on their schoolwork.
It's interesting that you said that. I've had a podcast with a guy called Michael Patek, and one of the biggest things that he does, he works with like C-level executives, but he also works with teams, and he has a background in musical theater. And a part of his practice is this concept of play. So he'll have these adults who are used to being at high levels, operating at certain, I would say standards or whatnot. And he gets them into this play factor where they're moving around, they're doing activities. And for some people, they think it's silly, but then they end up increasing their actual production and just overall a feeling for the environment because they just had this moment of play. And it's like, okay, how did we forget that this element growing up and still
It is
incorporating it?
it is huge. I mean, there's a statistic that says that like most people after age 25 will never sprint again.
I saw that.
How scary is that?
I started sprinting again. I can tell you that.
Right.
Immediately
I thought
started sprinting again.
I started intervals immediately. But I mean, and play is so important, not just for physical health, but obviously for mental health. If you have very high achievers like that who start to achieve better after that, what's happening? Well, during play, they're releasing great endorphins, but also it probably helps them makes them feel better about themselves. And when somebody's confidence increases, a lot of times it will increase not just with their physical body, but it'll increase in the boardroom, increase in the classroom, wherever you are.
On that topic, right, of increasing confidence, when you're working with these other coaches and you're implementing a lot of the knowledge that you have and the methodologies that you guys have at ANHCO, how have you seen, I guess, the time management portion of dealing with all these different coaches from these different backgrounds and different niches, making sure that they can operate effectively, and then like also at the same time you operate effectively? Because I know me as a coach, that was one of the biggest struggles I had to then coach so many different people. It's like I'm talking about the same thing, but how do I manage all this time, all these people? Like,
Yeah, there are definitely lots of things that you can do. It's important, especially right now with so many people wanting coaching. A lot of times we just can't offer one-on-one coaching on a regular basis. That doesn't mean they can't have one-on-one coaching, but it does mean that you can choose different tools to assist with that. If you are a coach that is doing the one-on-one coaching and is frazzled, then you're going to have diminished client outcome when coaches are overwhelmed and distracted or constantly playing catch up on their notes, which, I've done before. I've spent hours afterwards taking notes. They're not fully present for their clients because they're thinking about what they have to do in the future. So a lot of what we do at ANHCO is teach them some of these things that they can do as far as time management, which includes blocking focus time. That's a huge part. So many people have their phone right in front of them, stuff going. Yeah. So one of the things, first of all, when you do the time blocking, you know, you're deciding what you're going to block that time for. And I tell my clients, the phone goes in another room.
that's very
Phone's
key.
in another room. You close down all of your windows, all of your emotional support tabs, and you focus on that one thing. And there are several, obviously you can get several programs to kind of help time and do the Pomodoro method or whatever you need to, but you decide how much time you're going to spend on that. That is all the time you spend. So I dedicate specific times to like client sessions, administrative work, content creation, and personal development. Other things that we can teach them are themed work days. So, for example, Tuesdays are deep client work. So you have one-on-ones on Tuesdays. Wednesdays you do content type of thing. Maybe Thursdays you do admin, Fridays you do planning. And then the other thing is really to make sure that you have buffer zones in between each thing that you do. And I can tell you with my students, whether it's people that I'm mentoring or university students that I teach, if they don't have buffer zones, I mean, your brain needs to have a break before it moves on to the next thing. So you need to have a good 10 to 15 minutes between a session for sure, or between changing subjects so that you can kind of reset and be fully present for what you're trying to do.
I think you're hitting on something very keen, which I guess is the similar concept of deep work, right? I know that was a big mistake I made in the very beginning. And even sometimes I have to catch myself as well too, because I'll have everything just back to back to back to back. And after like filling my day up or filling my schedule, I look at it, I'm like, how am I going to put, like, not how am I going to do this in the sense of getting it done, but energetically, how am I going to actually able to make sure by the end of the day, I'm still at least in that 80% like alertness to get the job done. And for me personally, I always felt like I had to do the same core things every day, right? So it's like, hey, I got to make sure I have these amount of people that I'm coaching, or have this amount of time that I'm like outreaching, or this amount of time for content. And then it stressed me out more than having what these things are called theme days, where it's like, hey, it's okay if I don't coach nobody this day, but I
Yeah.
can get the other stuff done that I then don't have to worry about. And it took me a minute to like get comfortable with that, because you're still doing work, right? But I think it's that idea that you're mentioning of the time blocks, where you just know that these specific times throughout the day you're doing work. Don't worry about what the categorization is. Just know you're doing work. Perfect. And then whatever's needed, you can allocate for that specific time block. So you're still the same, I would say, habitual output, or not habitual, sorry, the same like habit of output, right? But maybe it's focused on something differently. So that's something I know I've had to learn, and some other people that I know, that's what they're currently learning and being comfortable with. Because if I feel like I'm not doing one thing of the business, or like, I feel like it's all going to waste. But I'm like, no, I did all of that on this particular day, and now I'm good for the rest of the time.
Yeah, like
So
you did a great amount of work just by being able to focus on it for one day. So that's
yeah,
fantastic. Great. Now you're done for the week. Now you can move
correct.
on to the next.
And don't you feel like, I feel like you would actually get better work though, because not
You
only
absolutely do.
it's not you're not, because people don't understand sometimes there's a certain allocation of time and effort you have to mentally prepare to even start the work. And then that transition period that you're talking about, and you're not even then talking about the buffer time period. So
Yes.
like you're in the amount of increased lack of work in a way that you've just done, like you're wasting so much time versus,
Yes. Yeah,
well,
absolutely.
huh.
Actually, on a recent Huberman Lab podcast, I'll have to get you which one it was
Oh,
because
I love that. I
because
love this
Dr.
podcast.
Huberman, so he talks about when you start doing something and basically you have to allow yourself a little amount of time knowing that you have to, I mean, I'm a CrossFit coach too. And so one of the things that we say is, you got to embrace the suck. So he's basically saying you got to embrace the suck because your brain is going to be doing,
Yeah,
I don't really want to do something new right now. I always tell my clients, like, you're trying to do something new and your brain wants homeostasis. It doesn't want all these new chemicals and stuff going on because this is effort.
yeah,
And so he's basically explains how you basically have to embrace the suck and know that you have to go through that. Knowing that you have to go through that allows you to relax a little bit in knowing that once you get on the other side of that, you're actually able to concentrate.
yeah. That's one, he articulated that very well, because I'm thinking about other times I've done that, but it's so true. And now I'm thinking about even my own schedule, where I'm like, yeah, I probably should just block off this whole day and just like not necessarily do nothing, but anything to a high level of stress to where it's like I can get the other stuff done. But that's
And
in,
a long time ago, it used to be a cool thing to put, great at multitasking on your
yeah,
resume. People don't want to see that now because multitasking right now, I mean, this is why so many adults think they have ADHD. They've gotten used to getting so much input everywhere and then
correct.
scrolling and doing all of this stuff. They can't concentrate on anything. Anytime you put great at multitasking on a resume right now, it's a bad
It's a bad
thing.
idea.
Yeah,
It's
it's a bad thing for a hiring manager to see that.
so, And I guess maybe it's the concept where it's like the umbrella and then everything else underneath. So then how would you, the other side of that, if you are this person who can multitask or you have these multifaceted skill sets or abilities, how do you then position yourself where it's like, hey, I can be a great asset for this person or for this job without having to seem like this person is dysfunctional? Like,
What I would say for that is, you know, position yourself as somebody who is good at doing deep work in a short amount of time.
mhm,
Use the buzzwords at the time,
yeah,
look up the company and what they want, and utilize their language to say, can do this in certain amounts of time. If it's something that's really important for them to be able to show that they can multitask and do lots of things at once.
There's a guy, I can't remember his name, but their whole business is about LinkedIn, making sure your resume is good, cover letters, and they do very, very well. And I remember him saying this. This is like a couple years ago, but I don't think outside of just using that for work, I don't think people do that just in their day-to-day life. Of taking that same concept of like what's actually really needed in like my home or my relationships, and how can I then take these buzzwords or key elements that's important in these key areas and focus in on them and use them. And what I mean by that, for example, you're saying take these buzzwords that this company would want, right? I'm thinking more of like the life coaching aspect.
Sure.
You see this company, these are the buzzwords, you focus in on those and you articulate how you can then accomplish these specific buzzwords for them. No difference of like, hey, you have a partner, your partner is telling you these buzzwords and you articulate to them how you can accomplish or, how you can accomplish these buzzwords for them. Do you feel like people don't do that, like correlate the two together enough to where it's like, hey, what you do in work, life, health, they're relatively the same thing with slight differences?
Yes, absolutely.
Like, sorry, I know I probably went around, but I was trying to.
No, yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's why people are so unbalanced. And, you have the type A C-suite people who are overweight and have heart attacks, or you have the health nuts, but they can't focus on keeping a job. So, I mean, those are two extremes. Think about
That's
the
true
gym
though.
bros you see who are not keeping a job,
Yeah,
but recording content and thinking that they're going to make money. And then again, I see lots of executives that
yeah,
their main thing is their work. And so their family life suffers if they even have a family.
hmm,
Their health suffers. And so that's when that's when I start going, okay, tell me about your hydration. Tell me about your stress. Tell me about your social support. Tell
correct.
me about your physical activity. I go down the list. This is all this stuff that we're looking at, because even though we may be doing life coaching and working on what your next goal is as a C-suite executive, all of that stuff
Yeah,
goes into your success as an exec.
I don't know. Have you ever heard of the name Brandon Burchard for the high? He's like high performance habits. Or
Possibly.
that's what you're like the conversation you're saying is what you're reminding me of. And one of the key things that he talks about for like high performers is basically these concepts of the different pillars for them to, I'm butchering this by the way, but it's like the different pillars in the different areas to make sure that this machine is operating at full capacity. So it's like, hey, that's awesome. You want to do this for your business over the next 5 years? How are you going to take care of yourself to make sure that you can even get to there in the first place?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's one of the very first things when, I have if I have members who, for example, I had just a couple last week who I work with who've had just some family things happen and some tragedies happen, and they're trying to hold it together for their family, but they're trying to be everywhere all at once. And of course, my very first thing is, what are you doing to take care of yourself? Because if you can't take it, we always hear it, the old grandma saying you can't pour from an empty pitcher, but it's true. So the very first thing, what are you doing for yourself? This is not selfish. If you can't get more than 3 hours of sleep, you're not going to be able to help people.
Correct.
If you're not getting the proper nutrition, you're not going to be able to think straight. So I break it down like that for them. But that's very true. So, you do see a lot of the very high performers, who take immaculate care of their bodies and have very stringent routines that they follow
Yeah.
everywhere to make sure that they perform high everywhere.
There's a guy named Jocko Willington, and he has a book on it where it's discipline equals freedom. And I remember hearing that, and it was like a contradiction in itself, not contradiction in itself, but it was a high contrast. And I was like, what do you mean discipline creates freedom? And it wasn't until I realized at the peak of my own performance in my life where I felt the most free or the most optimal is like everything was like I was dialed in. I was disciplined. I had even like time blocks for when I would spend time with people, not do work. And I was just like, I reflected back. I was like, the times that I didn't feel free or I felt lost or I didn't have control is when I didn't have these systems, these different things in place in order to then get me to the point that I want to get into. Right now, the reason I say that, and I'm kind of curious, what are some of those systems or methodologies that you kind of go that you help people to incorporate into your practice? When you're obviously, I know it's a little bit different depending on the person, what they need, but what's a common, I guess, system you run people through?
So, probably one of the most common that we start with is sleep. And so,
You didn't have to
you
call
know,
me out like that, okay? Listen, I'm working on it. I know I'm drinking coffee. It's late at night. Listen, we're working on it.
and I actually work with another company that works specifically with medical doctors and EMTs and high performers over there in that industry where, sometimes they're up 48 hours at a time. And so we have to look at sleep systems and we have to look at when can you get the sleep. We do have to think about their circadian rhythms and when they can actually get light. When they're home, when they have 4 days off, we make sure that they go to sleep at the same time every night. We make sure that the phone is not in the room, the TV's not on, the room's dark, the room's cold. Uh, if you use your phone for an alarm, it's across the room on the dresser, upside down. And that's a great one because it helps people get out of bed instead of hitting snooze
Hmm.
while they lay there. Um,
I've been there. I got to throw it back into my schedule.
in that, a lot of those high performers, obviously, not only with sleep issues, but they have a lot of stress as well. And so, one of the things that I encourage people to do is either, if they're into it, journal before bed. So it doesn't have to be anything major, 5 to 10 minutes, just write down what you want, like a brain dump. Or I encourage them to keep a notebook beside the bed because that's great for overthinkers. So when they wake up at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, when they have that cortisol dump and they're up and they're wide awake and freaking out about whatever's going on next, they can write it down. As soon as they write it down, it's like it gets out of their head and they can actually relax. And then they know that it's
Gotcha.
down. They don't have to keep on thinking about what about this, what about that. I need to remember this in the morning. They got it written down. They can relax. So that's one of the things that I work on a lot with people. And there are lots of other things that we do with sleep as well, but
Yeah.
those are just some of the things that we start with that sleep pillar.
See, I thought I always liked sleeping in the cold just because I'm like 6'5", 265. I just thought I was a big person, radiating heat. I just wanted to be cold. But I did find, I was like, no, I just sleep better when it's cold. And like my partner or anything, they'll be like, why is it freezing in here? I was like, because this is the best sleep you're going to get. They're like, no, I'm going to die from being cold. I'm like, you'll be knocked out. You won't even know that that you're freezing. I promise it'll be the best sleep. And then come to find out it is.
Yeah.
So that makes more, again, back to like the body will take care of itself or do the things necessary as well. Question for you. This is kind of, it's not left field, but did you have an aha moment? Because I know I did. And for me, when I first got started, it was a little hard to embracing fully the concept of like, oh, okay, I am a coach or I am the coach. Did you have that moment like through your journey where you're like, huh, okay, I guess I'll just fall into this. Okay, I guess I'll become a coach. Or I mean, like you had an epiphany moment where it's like, oh yeah, I am a coach. I know some people it's a little bit different. Like some people are intentional. They're like, I'm becoming this. This is what I want to be. And I know like the term itself, coach, could have been different. But did you have that epiphany moment or that aha, like, okay, yeah, I'm gonna do this?
My journey to being a health coach is, I mean, everybody's is unique. My first degree was in advertising, and
Mm.
I worked as an editor and a writer at a magazine. Um, yeah. Um, no, I got to go on free trips to Puerto Rico and stuff like that.
Ooh,
That was great.
I'm
Wish I could
jealous.
still do that. But for some reason, I kind of decided as I was working at the magazine, I really want to, I've been a lifelong athlete and I
Hmm.
want to be a personal trainer. And so I
What
decided to go back
athlete
to,
did you? What sport?
I was soccer.
Oh, that's so much running at the time for me. I
Yes.
applaud every soccer player that there is. Because when I first got started in fitness and journey, I would see people run. I'm like, how are you doing that? Because I'm more of a football, online D line kind of
Huh?
guy, slow.
That's kind of how I
But
jog now. I call it the O-line trot.
yeah, I'm like, I'm there. So when I see people play like soccer or they track and field, I'm like, how do you just run? This is
Yeah. Yeah. It's, the beginning of every season was always really hard
yeah.
for about the first week. And then when you're that young, you get conditioned really fast. So it comes back really fast. But so I was like, I want to be a personal trainer. So I went
Hmm.
back to get my master's um, for exercise science and health
Hmm.
promotion. And my aha moment wasn't that I was going to be a coach. My aha moment was actually during my graduation for my master's. And I saw several of my cohorts,
Hmm.
friends, acquaintances getting hooded for their doctorate. And it was like this sinking feeling in the middle of graduation I had. I was like, oh crap, I got to go back and get a PhD. Like, this was nothing that I planned. This was definitely a universe, God, whatever. I
Yeah.
was just like, oh,
That
what?
was the fine print, the hidden message they didn't tell you about that you didn't really read. You just
That was that was the aha moment. Now, from there, you know, a lot of times I think that universities don't train PhDs to do anything but teach. And
okay.
so I went into being a professor, and it really wasn't for me.
Hmm.
It was working at a university is hard. They're
Yes, it is.
underpaid. They are doing work all the time. There's a lot of politics, and now with many university positions you have to raise money for research all the time, so it's a constant stress. And so I decided to leave that. And when I saw coaching, I was like, okay, this is kind of like teaching,
Hmm.
and it's kind of like personal training. I could do both of those.
I like that.
And so then I started, yeah. So then I started working for a great company in Nashville, and just kind of flowed from there. And so now it's, and I had gone on to mentor and manage many coaches, and kind of doing the same thing at ANHCO, but also still have my own coaching load. So I get the best of both worlds right now, because I get kind of like the administrative stuff along with the one-on-one stuff as well.
That's beautiful. Yeah, I know
So
every
it's a long story to say, no, I didn't have the aha moment to be
that's
a coach.
okay.
A moment that I had to get a PhD.
Yeah.
Uh, and I still don't know why. So we'll figure
Hey,
it out one of these days.
it's okay. It's funny because I did my undergrad, did my master's, but at the time I didn't necessarily want to do so. But my mom was always just like, "Yeah, go do your master's, go do this." And I'm just like, "Really? Okay, sure." So she would always have this conversation with me. Cool. I get done. She goes back to school, finally finishes. She's like, then going to do her master's. I was like, yeah, go ahead and do your master's, then do your doctorate and all this other stuff. She was like, oh, no, 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 I'm done after this. I'm like, but you told me when I was in school to do all this stuff. She was like, see, you were young. You had the energy for it. But thankfully,
Yeah.
she is now actually doing it. But she's in that same feeling. She's like, why do I have to do this?
I mean, I know it's for a reason. And
Yeah,
honestly, it has opened up obviously a lot of doors
of course.
for me, and allowed me to get deeper into the coaching realm, probably more so than I would have had the opportunity to before, or if I didn't have a PhD.
With that being said, as we kind of wrap up, I want to say one, just thank you so much for sharing your insights and your journey with us.
So thank you so much.
No worries. This I know I struggled being in that space in college, and not that I didn't want to do my profession, but I wish I would have started at least the aspirations to do the coaching, consulting, kind of just like practice earlier on. So I
Mhm.
hope that anyone, if they feel like they're in the same similar boat, knowing that they can do it, even if they are in school right now, or if you're like, hey, I don't want to go to school, but I still want that outcome, you can get a certification. Like you can still educate yourself in this field, and
Absolutely.
y'all have so many different resources. What would be the best place for if someone was inspiring one to become a health and life coach, what would be the best place for that for them?
Well, I can say, first of all, there are lots of different places,
Hmm.
obviously. I love my place.
Which makes sense.
I can say that there are actually a lot of universities that are teaching coaching classes right now. So it is
Wow.
recognized right now that this is a new industry that's coming up.
I did not
You
know
know,
that.
yes, so it is available in many industries right now. I do like what we're doing at ANHCO because I think that we're kind of putting some missing pieces together.
Hmm.
We've got a dual health and life coach certificate, but it's not just that. We also, we've got 30 modules on how to put your business together. We've got,
That part.
yeah, uh,
I wish I had that part when I learned
yeah, and that's
everything.
what's missing, I think. So that's why I'm so excited about this. So it's how to put your business together. It's, how to market yourself online. It's, how to be the top hit in the search engine.
Correct.
It's all of those things that I wish I had, absolutely, and that I don't see anybody else offering as of right now. So I'm absolutely excited about what we're doing at ANCO because I think that it's something that nobody else is doing, and I think that we also want to make sure that, by the time each student leaves that or graduates from our program, that we've helped them to focus on a specific niche that's their own. And we help them set up websites. We help them figure it out. We help them do all of that stuff. So we're really helping and mentoring people not just to learn health coaching, but to market themselves and make a business so that they can actually be successful.
I think honestly that was the biggest thing that stood out to me because I've monetary gain from being an artist and then being a fitness coach and then like in sales coaching. But the one aspect I felt like every time I was missing was not learning the technical of the practice itself, but the business aspect. And I was just like, okay, that's awesome. I know, everything that needs, well, not everything, but a good amount that's needed to be like personal training. Like I got my NASM certification. We're good. Okay, awesome. Like, how do I then market myself? How do I go about getting clients? Like, how do I run the operations of or build a business, not just be a better quote unquote coach in the sense of a technical term. And for what you guys are doing, it's like the A to Z, which is so nice. It's not leaving them in the middle, right? Which I think is incredible. As more coaches involved, they're realizing like, no, 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 no. I don't want to just be a glorified freelancer or a glorified, practitioner. I want to create a business out of this.
Right?
And I'm excited to see that changing or like to see that evolve and that you guys are like basically pioneering this field. Or at least I think that's what it feels like for me.
That's what it feels like for us too.
Okay.
Dr. Amarine's goal was to put this together to really, make it comprehensive and make it so that, you don't have to pay somebody else to, for another expensive class on how to set yourself up online or how
Yeah.
to market yourself online. That doesn't really work. She's had many businesses that she's started up, many successful businesses, and she knows what works.
Hmm.
So it's one of those things where she's got the knowledge and she's got the background. And so I've got the health coaching stuff. She's got the other stuff. Plus she's a psychiatrist too. So she's got a lot going on.
That's wow. I applaud her. That is incredible.
Yeah. So, but yeah. So we think, and we've got, another former coworker of mine is also one of our lead coaches. He's also NBHWC certified. So we're really excited about the new program we've got going on.
That is amazing. And guys, if you are listening to this and you're curious, I highly recommend to go look. Like I looked at some of the programs and I'm like, I've invested way more than this, not even for half the knowledge that you're providing. And I was just like,
Yes.
where was this when I first got started? And how you can break it down to, I was like, this is a still. It's like a no-brainer for anyone that's looking to get involved.
Well, feel free to sign up, Jay.
Yeah, don't be surprised if you just see in the order, you're like, I know this name for some reason. Listen, again, I am a student to life. I am always looking to advance my skill set. So do not be surprised if you see an order come in. I'm like, all right, I've enrolled. Here we go. Let's get this thing
Excellent.
started. With that being said, closing out, where do you see the future of ANHCO? That's 5 years, 10 years, but in general, where are you guys looking to go and move forward?
Well, we are looking to certainly create a space where, we obviously continue to evolve with the coaching space.
Hmm.
I definitely see us adding more things, adding in AI modules, different things that you can use for that, adding in more things about asynchronous health coaching,
Hmm.
whether that's via Loom or Zoom or, texting, things like that. We would like to eventually have our own basically health coach CRM so that we can market that to health coaches because there's not just any out there. A lot
Yeah.
of a lot of them are CRMs that are made for companies, but there's not really anything out there for somebody who's an individual trying to do this.
Hmm.
So we would love to have our own CRM. We would love to also, just basically partner up with people and just assist however many people we can in going into this field that is really, I feel like, about to really explode.
I 100% agree with you. Because it feels like coaching has been around for forever to a degree, like a format of it has. But I honestly feel like it's just getting started.
Yeah, I think so.
It's just
I think people are just realizing that this is just, just like business people have mentors, this is just another type of mentor that can help you reach your goals.
correct. I definitely agree. And if someone wanted to get in contact, learn more from you, just in general, they're like, hey, Dr. Gina, I have more questions. I just want to see if I can connect with you. What would be the best place for them to do so?
Sure, they can reach me on LinkedIn. So it's just LinkedIn, Gina Sobrero, which you can see the spelling down there. Luckily, everybody can see that, so I don't have to spell it out. Or you can go to anco.org. So that's ANHCO.org to find out more about our programs.
And I always tell people if you had to leave someone with one piece of insight, what would be that one insight you would like to leave people with?
I would actually say, I would give the advice that you keep on saying that you are is be a lifelong learner because this is something that health coaching is something that is going to evolve as we evolve. So you have to be a lifelong learner with this. So my advice is be a lifelong learner, continue to be a lifelong learner because I think it's going to be a really exciting ride.
I appreciate that. If nobody's giving you your flowers yet, I'm going to give you your flowers while you're still here with us and just say thank you so much for sharing your
So thank
story and
you.
your journey with us. So, of
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure.
course, awesome guys. Till next time, peace.